My name is Allison, and I'm 38 years old. 20 years of marriage, one son about to leave for college, and a life I thought we'd built together. Greg and I were supposed to enter this next chapter as a team, finally having time for just the two of us. Then he started going to the gym 5 days a week, buying skinny jeans and expensive sneakers, growing his beard out like some hipster half his age. I thought it was beautiful, this midlife awakening. I encouraged it. I had no idea he wasn't waking up to himself. He was waking up to someone else, someone young enough to be our daughter. Before I tell you what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching this from. Drop your location in the comments below. And please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Because what I said to my husband when he told me I was too old didn't just leave him speechless. It completely flipped the script. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this plays out. Our 20th anniversary happened 3 months ago. We celebrated at home instead of going out, which was Lucas's idea. Our son, 18 years old and about to graduate high school, insisted on cooking dinner for us. He made this elaborate pasta dish with homemade sauce, set the table with candles, the whole production. It was sweet watching him try so hard to make the evening special for us. Greg gave me a silver bracelet, simple and delicate. Not expensive, but I loved it because it reminded me of when we were young and broke, when thoughtful meant more than costly. He held my hand across the table and said something that made my heart warm. He said once Lucas left for college, we could finally focus on us again. A second honeymoon phase, he called it. We could travel, rediscover each other, be young again together. I remember squeezing his hand, feeling grateful. 20 years. We'd made it through everything. The struggles, the sleepless nights, the financial stress, the health scares. And now we were about to reap the rewards of all that hard work. Looking back now, I realize Greg meant something entirely different when he said he wanted to feel young again. We met when I was 18 and he was 20. It was at a small art gallery downtown, one of those places where local artists display their work and serve cheap wine in plastic cups. I was fresh out of high school, just starting my graphic design degree. Greg was in his second year of architecture school, all passion and big dreams about changing skylines. Someone had been careless with their wine, and it ended up all over my white sneakers. Greg appeared with napkins, making jokes about abstract art and ruined shoes. By the end of the night, he'd sketched the gallery building on a napkin for me, adding little details that made it look magical. I kept that napkin for years. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. Both our families thought we were too young, too impractical. His parents wanted him to focus on finishing school. Mine worried I'd give up my own ambitions to support his. But we were so sure, so certain, that what we had was special enough to overcome anything. We got married in a tiny ceremony with just immediate family. Our honeymoon was a weekend camping trip because that's all we could afford. And honestly, those were some of the happiest days of my life. We had nothing but each other, and it felt like enough. Then came Lucas. I was 20 years old, still in college, when I got pregnant. It wasn't planned, but we were happy about it. Scared out of our minds, but happy. Lucas was born with asthma severe enough that his first year was a constant cycle of hospital visits and sleepless nights. I'd sit in emergency rooms at 3 a.m. holding my baby while he struggled to breathe, and Greg would be right there beside me, equally terrified but trying to stay strong. Money was brutally tight those years. Greg was working as an unpaid intern at an architecture firm, trying to build his portfolio and make connections. I did freelance graphic design from home, squeezing work in during Lucas's nap times, and after bedtime, never making quite enough, but doing what I could. We ate a lot of pasta and rice. We shopped at thrift stores. We made it work because we had to, because we had this tiny human depending on us. But we did it together. Every scary moment, every financial crisis, every exhausted argument at 2 a.m, we faced it as a team. That's what I thought marriage was. Partnership through everything. Slowly things got better. Greg landed a real job with a salary. Lucas's asthma became more manageable. I was able to take on better paying clients. By the time Lucas was 7, we'd saved enough for a down payment on a house. Not just any house, but one Greg designed himself. It was his dream to create a home specifically for our family, and watching it take shape felt like watching all our struggles finally pay off. I planted roses in the front yard that first spring. Tea roses and climbing varieties, spending hours researching which would thrive in our climate. Every year they grew more beautiful, and I felt the same way about our life. We were blooming. Greg made partner at his firm 5 years ago. It came with a significant raise and more prestige. Around the same time, my little design studio started doing really well. I had 3 employees, steady clients, and work I genuinely enjoyed. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. We could pay our bills without stress, save for Lucas's college, take a vacation each year. Lucas grew into this incredible kid. Smart, kind, funny. He'd overcome his health issues and become this athletic teenager who played basketball and got good grades. Watching him grow up felt like our greatest achievement. We had family dinners most nights. We went to Lucas's games together. We had inside jokes and traditions. From the outside, we looked like we'd figured it all out. And I thought we had. The changes started about 2 months before our anniversary. Greg announced he was joining a gym. This wasn't unusual in itself. Plenty of people our age start focusing on health. But Greg went all in. 5 days a week, sometimes 6. He'd leave for work early to fit in a morning session, or go right after work, coming home at 8 or 9 at night. He started this ketogenic diet, weighing his food, tracking macros, declining the dinners I cooked in favor of plain chicken breast and vegetables. Again, I supported it. Health is important. I told him I was proud of him for taking care of himself. Then came the wardrobe changes. Greg had always dressed professionally but conservatively. Button-down shirts, khakis, sensible shoes. Suddenly he was buying these trendy clothes. Fitted t-shirts that showed off his new muscles. Expensive sneakers that cost $300. Jeans so skinny I didn't know how he got into them. He grew his beard out and started using some kind of oil that made it look deliberately scruffy. He looked good. I told him so. He'd lost about 20 pounds and was more muscular than he'd been in our entire marriage. At 38, I thought maybe I should join him, get back in shape myself. But between work and managing everything at home, I never quite found the time. I didn't see it as a warning sign. I saw it as my husband taking care of himself, and I was genuinely happy for him. I should have paid more attention. The first real sign that something was off came on a Saturday afternoon in early spring. I was at the grocery store taking my time browsing the produce section when I saw Greg. He was in the organic foods aisle somewhere he never went. He always complained that organic was a waste of money, that it was all marketing. But there he was, and he wasn't alone. A young woman stood next to him, and they were clearly together, not just 2 strangers reaching for the same item. She was in her 20s with long hair pulled into a high ponytail, wearing athletic clothes that showed off a perfectly toned body. They were laughing about something comfortable with each other in a way that made my stomach tighten. As I watched, she touched his arm while making a point about something on a package label. It was casual, familiar. He smiled at her in a way I hadn't seen in months. I started to walk toward them, planning to say hello, ask who his friend was. But my phone rang, a client with an urgent question. I answered, and when I looked up 30 seconds later, they were gone. That evening I mentioned it to Greg. Tried to keep my tone light, curious rather than accusing. I thought I saw you at Whole Foods today. He barely looked up from his laptop. Yeah, I needed to grab some protein powder. Didn't see you, though. You were in the organic section, I said, watching his face. Had to walk through it to get to the supplements, he replied smoothly. Why? I could have pushed. Could have asked about the woman. But I didn't. I told myself I was being paranoid, seeing problems where there weren't any. The distance between us grew more noticeable after that. We'd always had a healthy physical relationship, even after 18 years of marriage. But suddenly Greg was never interested. Every time I initiated, he had an excuse. I'm exhausted from my workout. I need to focus on recovery, babe. Sleep is important for muscle growth. I've got this massive headache. 6 weeks passed. with nothing. 6 weeks of feeling invisible in my own bed. I started analyzing myself in the mirror, trying to see what Greg saw. At 38, I wasn't the girl he'd married. I'd had a baby. My body had changed. I'd gained about 15 pounds since our wedding, most of it settling around my hips and stomach. I had lines around my eyes that no amount of cream seemed to fade. Was I not attractive anymore? Had Greg simply lost interest in me physically? I tried dropping hints about working out together, maybe as a couple's activity. He said the gym was his personal time, his way to decompress from work stress. I let it go. Other things started piling up. Greg began taking phone calls outside, walking out to the patio, or even to his car for privacy. When I asked who he was talking to, he'd say it was a difficult client or someone from the firm. The explanations were always reasonable. He changed the passcode on his phone. In 20 years of marriage, we'd never had passcodes from each other. When I mentioned it, he said his firm had implemented new security protocols that everyone had to password protect their devices. Made sense. I didn't push. But I noticed him smiling at text messages, this little laugh under his breath as he typed replies. When I asked what was funny, he'd say, "Just a meme," or "Nothing really," and put the phone away. The conversations clearly weren't nothing, but I didn't know how to say that without sounding jealous or controlling. One evening I caught a glimpse of his phone when a text came through. The contact name was just TT, with a sun emoji. The preview said something about missing yesterday. He grabbed the phone quickly, reading it in a way that deliberately angled the screen away from me. Something was wrong. I knew it in my bones. But I didn't want to be the suspicious wife, the one who couldn't trust her husband. We'd built 20 years on trust. I wasn't going to throw that away over a feeling. Then came Lucas's senior presentation at school. All the graduating seniors gave a talk about their plans for the future, what they'd learned, thanking the people who'd supported them. It was a big deal, and both Greg and I had promised to be there. I arrived early, saved 2 seats. The presentation started. Lucas was scheduled for the middle of the program. Greg's seat stayed empty. I texted him. No response. I called. Voicemail. Finally, 45 minutes into the program, just as Lucas was finishing his presentation, Greg slipped into the seat beside me. He squeezed my hand apologetically, whispered, "Meeting ran long," and focused on the stage. Except something didn't add up. There was dried grass on his shoes, the kind you'd get from walking through a park, not from an office building. And he smelled like sunscreen, which seemed odd for early evening in April. After the presentation, Lucas hugged us both, excited about college. Greg acted completely normal, proud dad mode, fully engaged. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't been at any meeting. He'd been somewhere else entirely. That night I lay awake while Greg slept peacefully beside me. I kept thinking about the woman at the grocery store, the mysterious phone calls, the changed passcode, the grass on his shoes. Each thing alone was nothing. Together they formed a picture I didn't want to see, but I was starting to see it anyway. The phone call came on a Thursday morning. Greg had already left for work, and I was home working on a design project, music playing softly in my studio. The house phone rang, which was unusual. Most people called our cells. I almost didn't answer. Then I thought maybe it was Lucas's school or my mom trying to reach me. "Hello? Hi, this is Tessa from Lotus Yoga Studio." The voice was young, cheerful, energetic. "I'm calling to confirm Greg's private session this Saturday at 9 a.m. My brain stuttered. "Private session?" "Yes." She sounded slightly confused by my confusion. "He's been coming for 2 months now. Private sessions with me every Tuesday and Saturday morning. Is there a problem?" "No," I managed. "No problem. Thank you for confirming." "Great. And please remind him to bring his mat this time. He forgot it last week and had to use one of ours." "I'll remind him." "Perfect. See you Saturday." She hung up. I stood there holding the phone, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Yoga, private sessions, 2 months, twice a week. Greg had never mentioned yoga, not once. He talked about the gym constantly, about his lifting routine, his cardio, his protein intake. But yoga. With someone named Tessa Never. I sat down at my computer and Googled Lotus Yoga Studio. Found their website immediately. Clean modern design. I clicked through to the instructor's page. There she was. Tessa Reynolds. 24 years old according to her bio. Long brown hair and her photo bright smile, wearing a sports bra and leggings that showed off an impossibly fit body. Her bio said she specialized in vinyasa flow and private instruction for clients wanting personalized attention. I felt sick. I opened Instagram, searched for her name. Her account was public. I scrolled through photos of her in various yoga poses, inspirational quotes about strength and flexibility, pictures with clients whose faces were cropped out or turned away. Then I found it. A photo from 3 weeks ago. The caption read, "Transformation goals achieved," with a muscle emoji and a fire emoji. The picture showed Tessa with a man whose face wasn't visible, just his back. But I knew that back. I knew that shirt. I'd bought Greg that shirt for his birthday last year. The comments were full of praise, admiration, people asking about her training methods. One comment from an account named Greg Arch 40 said, "Best instructor ever," with praying hands emoji. Greg Arch 40. Greg Architect, 40 years old. My hands shook as I scrolled through Greg's Instagram, something I rarely looked at. He hardly ever posted, and when he did, it was usually work-related. Architecture photos, project updates. But his likes told a different story. Post after post from Tessa's account. Every single thing she'd posted in the last 2 months Greg had liked. Some he'd commented on with generic encouragement, but the pattern was unmistakable. I spent the next hour going through our bank statements online. And there it was. Charges to Lotus Yoga Studio. $250 twice a week for 8 weeks. $4,000 spent on private yoga sessions he'd never once mentioned. But that wasn't all. Jewelry purchases from a boutique I'd never heard of. Charges at expensive restaurants downtown. Spa packages. Flower delivery services. Altogether, Greg had spent approximately $15,000 in 2 months on things that had nothing to do with our family. $15,000. On someone else. I called my sister Rachel. She was a financial advisor, practical and level-headed. If anyone could help me make sense of this without falling apart, it was her. "Allison." Her voice was concerned the moment she heard me. "What's wrong?" I told her everything. The yoga studio, the Instagram account, the spending. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Check everything. All accounts, credit cards, anything joint. Take screenshots. And honestly, you might want to open a separate account, just in case." "You think it's that serious? $15,000 in 2 months on someone else? That's not just serious. That's calculated courtship. He's pursuing her." The words hit me like cold water. Courtship. Pursuit. My husband was courting another woman. "I'm coming over," Rachel said. "Don't confront him yet. Let's figure out what we're dealing with first." She arrived within the hour. We went through everything together, documenting each suspicious charge, each pattern. Rachel's face grew grimmer the more we found. "You need to talk to a lawyer," she finally said. "Not because you've decided anything, but because you need to know your options, what you're entitled to, how to protect yourself." "I can't believe this is happening." "I know." She hugged me. "But Allison, you're strong. You've always been strong. Whatever happens, you'll get through it." When Greg came home that evening, I was waiting. Lucas was conveniently at his friend's house for a study session. It was just us. "We need to talk," I said. His face went carefully neutral. "About Lotus Yoga Studio called today to confirm your Saturday appointment." I watched the color drain from his face, then rush back as a flush crept up his neck. "Allison, I was going to tell you." "Tell me what?" "That you've been spending $4,000 on private yoga sessions, or that you've been lying about going to the gym." "I'm not lying about the gym. I do go to the gym. I also do yoga. It's good for flexibility, for recovery." "Private sessions. Twice a week. For 2 months. And you never thought to mention it. I wanted to surprise you. His voice was smooth, practiced. I wanted to get good at it first, then maybe we could go to classes together. It could be something we do as a couple. It was a good lie. Well crafted. Almost believable. Who's TT? I asked. He blinked. What? On your phone. TT with the sun emoji. Who is that? That's Tessa, my instructor. Why is your instructor in your personal phone? She texts about scheduling changes reminders. He was getting defensive now. There's nothing weird about that. Show me. What? Your phone. Show me the messages with Tessa. Allison, this is ridiculous. You're being paranoid. Am I? Because, from where I'm standing, you've spent $15,000, changed your entire appearance, become secretive about your phone, and failed to mention you're spending hours alone with a 24-year-old woman twice a week. He said nothing. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I saw you, I said quietly. At Whole Foods. With her. You touched her arm. You looked at her the way you used to look at me. Greg ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration I knew well. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth would be nice. Fine. He sat down heavily. Tessa is my instructor. Yes, she's young and attractive. Yes, we've become friendly. But it's not what you're thinking. What am I thinking? That something's going on. There isn't. She's just someone who makes me feel good about myself, about the progress I'm making. That's it. But his eyes wouldn't meet mine, and I knew with absolute certainty that he was lying. I didn't push further that night. I couldn't. I was too afraid of what else I might learn. So I let him keep his lies, and I started planning my next move. 2 days later, I did something I'd never imagined doing. I went to Lotus Yoga Studio, not to confront anyone, just to see. I needed to see them together to know if what I suspected was real or just my imagination creating problems. I parked across the street at 9:15. Greg's session started at 9. At 9:50, the door opened and they came out together. Greg and Tessa laughing about something. She touched his arm again, that same casual gesture I'd seen at the grocery store. But this time, Greg caught her hand, held it for a moment longer than necessary. They walked to a cafe 2 doors down, sat at an outside table. I watched as Tessa leaned forward, animated, telling some story. Watched Greg reach across the table and take her hand properly, this time fingers intertwining. My husband was holding another woman's hand. In public. In broad daylight. I took photos. Several of them. My hands were shaking so badly the first few were blurred, but I kept trying until I got clear shots. Then I drove home and cried in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could pull myself together enough to go inside. I didn't confront him immediately. I needed more information, more time to think. But I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal either. The tension in our house became thick enough to cut. Lucas noticed. One evening after Greg had left for another supposed gym session, Lucas came into my studio where I was working. Mom, is everything okay with you and Dad? I looked at my son, this young man about to start his own life, and didn't want to burden him with our problems right before his graduation. We're just going through a rough patch, I said. Nothing for you to worry about. You'd tell me if it was serious, right? Of course. He hugged me, and I held on to him, maybe a little too long. I called Rachel again, met her for coffee, and showed her the photos. That's evidence of infidelity, she said bluntly. You need to see a lawyer now. Not next week. Now. I'm not ready to file for divorce. I'm not saying you have to, but you need to know where you stand, what you're entitled to, how to protect yourself financially. Knowledge is power, Allison. She gave me the name of Kevin Chen, a divorce attorney she'd worked with professionally. I made an appointment for the following Tuesday. Kevin's office was modern and intimidating. He was maybe 50 with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Tell me everything, he said. I did. All of it. The changes, the spending the yoga sessions, the photos. He listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, he said, "First, you need to document everything. Take screenshots of accounts spending messages if you can access them. Keep a timeline of events. Second, how are your finances structured? Everything's joint. The house savings, checking accounts. Open a separate account. Transfer some money. Not half, not even close. Just enough that if he empties the joint accounts tomorrow, you're not completely without resources." He wouldn't do that. Kevin looked at me. You didn't think he'd cheat either. The words stung because they were true. We spent an hour going over assets. The house purchased 15 years ago for $350,000, now worth approximately $650,000. Our joint savings held $180,000. Greg's 401k had grown to $320,000. Mine held $150,000. In this state, anything acquired during marriage is marital property, Kevin explained. Split 50-50 in most cases. But there are factors that can shift that. Infidelity isn't one of them, unfortunately. But financial misconduct can be. What do you mean? If he's spending marital funds on an affair that's dissipation of marital assets, you could potentially recoup some of that. He continued explaining legal strategies, but I was barely listening. The reality was sinking in. My marriage might actually be ending. There's one more thing you should know, Kevin said. I pulled some basic info on your husband's employment. He's a partner at Henderson and Associates. Yes. They're a good firm. Partners there make solid money, but the real value is in the partnership shares. Those are significant assets in a divorce. I'd need to see his contract, but we're probably talking several $100,000 in value. My head was spinning. I'd never thought about Greg's partnership in those terms. It was just his job. I left Kevin's office feeling like I was preparing for war when all I'd wanted was a peaceful life with the man I loved. That evening I made a decision. I couldn't keep living in this limbo. I needed to confront Greg properly, hear the truth from him directly. I sent Lucas to my mom's house, told him we needed the evening alone. He looked worried but didn't argue. When Greg got home at 8:30 later than usual, I was sitting in the living room. I'd printed out all the evidence, bank statements with charges highlighted, the photos from the cafe, screenshots from Instagram. Everything was spread across the coffee table like cards in a game we were about to play. "Sit down," I said. "We're going to have the conversation we should have had days ago." Greg saw the papers and his face went pale. "Allison, let me explain." "Don't." My voice was harder than I'd ever heard it. "Don't explain. Don't make excuses. Don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Just tell me the truth. Are you having an affair with Tessa?" The silence was answer enough, but I needed to hear him say it. "Yes," he finally whispered. The word hung in the air between us. Yes. Such a small word for such massive destruction. How long? 2 months. Are you in love with her? It's not about love. He looked at his hands. It's about how she makes me feel. And how does she make you feel? Young, energetic, like I still have possibilities ahead of me. I almost laughed. And I don't make you feel that way. You're a wonderful mother, a wonderful wife. But Allison, we've already lived our lives. Tessa is still living hers. The words hit me like physical blows. We're 38 and 40. That's not ancient. We got married so young. Had Lucas so young. I never got to just be young and free. So this is about what recapturing lost youth. Maybe. His voice was rising now, defensive. Is that so wrong? We're about to be empty nesters. Lucas is leaving. I looked at our future, and I just saw us getting older, more settled, more boring. And then I met Tessa, and she reminded me that I don't have to accept that. Accept what growing older that's called life, Greg. She has energy I haven't felt in years. Her body is incredible. She takes care of herself. When I'm with her, I don't feel like someone's dad or someone's husband. I'm just Greg. Each sentence felt like a knife. And when you're with me, you feel old. I feel like we've peaked, like the best years are behind us. So I'm what, disposable now? 20 years of marriage and I'm just the first act. Greg stood up, pacing. That's not fair. You're the one having an affair, and I'm not being fair. I didn't plan this, Allison. It just happened. Nothing just happens. You made choices. You chose to spend thousands of dollars on her. You chose to lie to me. You chose to hold her hand and look at her the way you used to look at me. She's 24, Allison. She's in her prime. The words stopped me cold. Her prime. And what am I? You're 38. You had a baby. Your body changed. That's just reality. You're saying I'm past my prime. I'm saying Tessa is at the beginning of her life, and you and I are already halfway through ours. And honestly, I want to experience someone who's still in that exciting phase. I stared at my husband, this man I'd loved for 20 years, and barely recognized him. You mean someone who hasn't sacrificed her body to carry your child? Someone who hasn't spent 18 years putting your family ahead of her own needs? Don't turn this into a martyr complex. A martyr complex, Greg. I've supported you through everything. I put my education on hold when Lucas was born. I took on freelance work I could do from home so you could take an unpaid internship. I've cooked thousands of dinners, done thousands of loads of laundry, organized our entire life so you could focus on your career. And I appreciate that. But it doesn't mean I have to spend the rest of my life settling. Settling? My voice broke on the word. With Tessa, I don't have to be the responsible one. She doesn't nag me about chores or remind me about doctor's appointments. She just wants to have fun, to be spontaneous. She makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years. Because she doesn't have responsibilities. Because she's 24 and doesn't have a family depending on her. Exactly. And I'm almost 40, Allison. This is my last chance to feel young again. To be with someone who's still got that energy, that excitement. Her body is perfect. She hasn't been worn down by life yet. Worn down. He'd said it. He saw me as worn down, used up past my expiration date. So that's what this is about. You want someone younger, firmer, more exciting. And I'm just the old model you're trading in. Greg had the decency to look uncomfortable. I know how this sounds. Do you really? Because right now you sound like a man who values women based on their age and appearance, who thinks his wife of 20 years is disposable because a girl young enough to be his daughter smiled at him. I'm not trying to hurt you. Well, you're doing a spectacular job of it anyway. We stood there in the wreckage of our marriage, everything broken and laid bare. And I realized something. Greg wasn't sorry. He wasn't conflicted. He'd made his choice. He wanted Tessa's youth, her energy, her perfect, untouched body, and he was willing to throw away everything we'd built to get it. After Greg's confession, after the cruel honesty of his words, I expected to break down. I thought I'd cry, plead, maybe even beg him to stay. That's what he expected too. I could see it in his face, the way he braced himself for my emotional collapse. But something strange happened. As he stood there, having just told me I was basically used up at 38, a clarity washed over me, ice cold and sharp. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine, took a long sip. Then I turned back to Greg, who was watching me with confusion. Okay, I said calmly. Okay. You want young. You want prime. You want someone who makes you feel alive. Okay? He looked suspicious. You're not going to fight this. Oh, I'm going to fight. I sat down, crossing my legs. But not in the way you think. Because there's something you need to know, Greg. Something I haven't told you. What? My business. My little design studio that you've barely asked about in years. What about it? 2 years ago, I started creating digital products. Design templates, custom fonts, digital assets that other designers could purchase and use. Greg looked impatient. Okay, so at first it was just extra income, a few $100s here and there. But then one of my font packages went viral. A tech company bought exclusive rights to use it in their rebrand. How much did they pay you? $50,000. For one font package. His eyes widened slightly. After that, I created more products. Lots more. I have an entire library now. Last year, my digital products generated $380,000 in revenue. Greg's jaw dropped. What? This year, I'm projected to exceed 500,000. He sat down hard. $500,000? Yes. From my little design studio that you always seem to think was just a hobby to keep me busy. But I never saw that money in our accounts. Because I opened a separate business account 2 years ago. Every dollar of that income goes into it. I pay myself a small salary from it into our joint account, but the rest stays in my business. Allison, that's marital property. Anything earned during marriage is joint. I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. I've already talked to a lawyer, Greg. Yes, technically it's marital property. But there's another interesting fact you might want to know. What? Do you remember how we bought this house 15 years ago, where the down payment came from? His face was pale now. Your grandmother's inheritance. Exactly. $150,000 that my grandmother left specifically to me. We used it as a down payment. According to my lawyer, that down payment is considered separate property, which means I'm entitled to a larger portion of the home equity than you are. Allison, wait. I'm not done. Your 401k has $320,000, mine has $150,000. But I've actually contributed more to mine over the last 5 years because I had higher income. We can trace those contributions. Your partnership at Henderson and Associates is worth about $200,000 in shares. How do you know that? I've been doing my homework. So let's add this up. In a divorce, you're looking at splitting the house equity, but I get a bigger share because of the down payment. We split retirement accounts, but mine has disproportionate recent contributions from my higher income. Your partnership shares get split. And there's the $15,000 you've spent on Tessa in the last 2 months. What about it? That's called dissipation of marital assets, spending joint money on an affair. My lawyer says I can potentially recoup that, maybe even more depending on how long this has actually been going on and how much you've really spent. Greg was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. So let's be clear about who's in their prime here, Greg. You make $180,000 a year. Good money, solid career. But I'm making close to $500,000. My business is growing. My income is accelerating. You're a mid-level partner in an established firm, probably close to your earning ceiling. I leaned forward. You told me Tessa makes you feel young and alive. Do you know what she makes as a yoga instructor? I looked it up. Average salary in this city is about $40,000 a year. Let's be generous and say she makes $50,000 with private sessions. That's not the point. Isn't it, though? You're about to throw away a marriage to a woman who earns 10 times what your new girlfriend makes. You'll lose half of everything we've built together. Your lifestyle is about to take a massive downgrade. Money isn't everything. You're right. But you just told me I'm past my prime at 38, while you chase a girl barely out of college. So let's talk about prime. Physically, maybe she's got youth on her side. But financially, professionally. In terms of actual life value, I stood up looking down at him. I'm at the peak of my earning potential. I'm established, successful, financially independent. Meanwhile, you're stuck in middle management at an architecture firm living off past achievements. I'm a partner, a junior partner. And you know what happens in divorces, Greg? Your comfortable life ends. You'll be paying child support for Lucas through college. You'll have to split assets. You'll have to downsize. And Tessa. Sweet young Tessa, is she going to be interested in a man who's suddenly living in a 1-bedroom apartment and watching his bank account? She's not like that. Every 24-year-old is like that when the money runs out. I took another sip of wine. You wanted someone young and exciting. Fine, but you'll be funding that excitement with half your assets and a significantly reduced lifestyle. While I'll be in this house that I mostly paid for running my thriving business, traveling wherever I want. Greg's arrogance had completely dissolved. His face was ashen. Here's what you didn't understand, Greg. When you called me past my prime, you were measuring the wrong things. Yes, I'm 38. Yes, I've had a child. Yes, my body has changed. But in every way that actually matters in the real world, I'm just hitting my stride. I walked over to where he sat frozen. You wanted to make me feel disposable, like I should be grateful you stayed with aging, worn-down me. But here's the truth. I'm the one with options. I'm the one with the income, the assets, the stability. And you're the one who just made the worst trade of your life. Allison, please. Let's talk about this reasonably. Oh, now you want to be reasonable, after telling me I'm past my prime, after spending our money on another woman, after making me feel worthless because I'm not 24 anymore. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. You meant exactly that. And now you're realizing what it's going to cost you. I set my wine glass down. You have until tomorrow morning to decide what you want. You can end it with Tessa move back home, and we can try to salvage this. Or you can leave. But if you leave, if you choose her, you're going to pay for that choice in ways you clearly haven't thought through. Are you threatening me? I'm stating facts. You want to feel young again? Go ahead. But you'll be doing it from a one-bedroom apartment on a tight budget. You want someone with a perfect body. Great. But she's going to expect you to keep up a certain lifestyle and you won't be able to afford it anymore. I grabbed my purse and keys. I'm going to stay at Rachel's tonight. You have this house to yourself. Think about what your life will actually look like if you blow this up. Think about what you're really trading away. Where are you going? Out, to spend time with people who actually value me. Something you clearly stopped doing a long time ago. I walked out, leaving Greg sitting in the ruins of what he'd thought was going to be an easy conversation. He'd expected me to crumble. Instead, I'd shown him exactly what he'd be losing. And for the first time in weeks, I felt powerful. I spent 3 days at Rachel's house. 3 days where I didn't answer Greg's calls, didn't respond to his texts. I needed the space to think clearly, to decide what I actually wanted, not just react to what he'd done. Greg called constantly, left voicemails that started apologetic and grew increasingly desperate. Rachel listened to a few of them with me, her expression growing more disgusted with each one. He's not sorry he did it, she said. He's sorry there are consequences. She was right. Every message was about how we could work it out, how he'd made a mistake, how we had too much history to throw away. Not once did he actually apologize for the things he'd said, for making me feel worthless, for spending months lying to me. On the 4th day, I called him. Come to the house at 7 tonight, we'll talk. Lucas was still at my mom's. I told him Greg and I were working through some issues and needed time alone. He'd asked point blank if we were getting divorced. I'd said I didn't know yet, which was honest. Greg arrived early at 6:45. I was ready. I'd thought through everything, made my decision. He looked terrible. Hadn't shaved hair, messy, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt. So different from the polished version of himself he'd been showing Tessa. Thank you for seeing me, he said. Sit down. We sat across from each other in the living room. The same room where this had all blown up days earlier. I've been thinking, Greg started, about everything you said. And you're right. I was being selfish and stupid. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose our family. I've ended things with Tessa. Have you? Yes, completely. I told her it was wrong that I was married, that it never should have happened. What did she say? She was upset, but she understood. I doubted that was the full truth, but it didn't matter. Did you block her number? Yes. Do you want to see? He pulled out his phone, showed me. Tessa's number was blocked. Okay, I said. He looked hopeful. So we can work on this, go to counseling maybe. I've been thinking about that, about whether I want to save this marriage. Of course you do. We've been together 20 years, Allison. That has to mean something. It does mean something. It means I spent 20 years loving someone who apparently saw me as past my prime at 38, someone who thought I was disposable enough to replace with a younger version. I didn't mean those things. I was caught, I was defensive. I said things I didn't mean. Did you? Because they seemed pretty clearly thought out to me. You told me my body was worn down, that Tessa's was perfect, that I wasn't exciting anymore. Those aren't things you say in the heat of the moment, Greg. Those are things you actually think. I was an idiot. Yes, you were. But that doesn't answer the question of whether you actually believed what you said. And honestly, I think you did. Greg stood up, pacing. What do you want me to say? Yes, part of me was attracted to someone younger. Part of me wondered what I'd missed by settling down so young. But I was wrong. I see that now. You see it now that you realize how much it's going to cost you. That's not fair. You know what's not fair, Greg, spending 18 years supporting someone's dreams, caring for their child, managing their entire life so they can focus on their career, and then being told you're past your prime because you're not 24 anymore. I stood up too, facing him. I've made a decision. I want a divorce. His face crumbled. Allison, no, please, don't do this. I'm not doing anything. You did this when you decided I wasn't enough. When you decided Tessa's perfect body was worth more than 2 decades of partnership. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever you want. It's too late for that. It's never too late. We can fix this. No, we can't. Because even if you never cheat again, even if you're the perfect husband from now on, I'll always know what you really think of me. That I'm the aging wife you settled for because the financial consequences of leaving were too harsh. That's not what I think. Then why did you say it? He had no answer for that. Here's the thing, Greg. The person I married 20 years ago wouldn't have said those things, wouldn't have thought them. Somewhere along the way, you stopped valuing me, stopped seeing me as a partner, and started seeing me as someone who was just there maintaining your life getting older while you figured out how to recapture your youth. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Multiple choices over months. And you only regret them now because they didn't work out the way you planned. I walked to the table where I'd left papers from Kevin's office. I've already filed for divorce. You'll be served in a few days. My lawyer will contact yours about the settlement. Allison, please. I love you. You love what I provide. Stability, financial security, a comfortable life. But you don't love me. If you did, you wouldn't have said those things. You wouldn't have made me feel worthless. Greg sank onto the couch, head in his hands. What about Lucas? Lucas is 18, old enough to understand. I'll tell him the truth, not all the details, but enough. He deserves honesty. This will destroy him. What destroyed him was you having an affair with someone his age. That's on you, not me. I picked up my purse. I'm going to Rachel's again tonight. I need you out of this house by the end of the week. We'll work out the details through lawyers. Where am I supposed to go? You're 40 years old with a job. Figure it out. Maybe Tessa will take you back now that she knows you're available. I told you I ended things with her. And I'm sure she'll be thrilled to know you're suddenly single. Young love conquers all right, or at least it does until the money runs out. I headed for the door. Greg followed, grabbing my arm. Allison, don't do this. I'm begging you. I looked at his hand on my arm, then at his face. Let go of me. He did immediately. I'm sorry. I just don't want to lose you. You already lost me. The moment you told me I was past my prime, that my body was worn down, that you needed someone younger to feel alive. Those words don't just disappear because you regret saying them. People say things they don't mean when they're cornered. Or they say things they've been thinking but were too polite to voice until forced to. I think it was the latter. I opened the door. Goodbye, Greg. Your lawyer will be hearing from mine. I left him standing in the doorway and drove away without looking back. The divorce took 6 months to finalize. Greg fought it at first, trying to negotiate a reconciliation, suggesting counseling, making promises. But I was done. Rachel had been right from the beginning. He wasn't sorry he'd done it. He was sorry there were consequences. The settlement was exactly what Kevin had predicted. The house equity was divided, but I got the larger share because of my grandmother's inheritance for the down payment. I bought out Greg's remaining portion for $325,000, which I could afford from my business income. Retirement accounts were split according to contributions. Greg's partnership shares were valued, and I received half. All told, between the house buyout retirement divisions and the settlement around his dissipated assets, I netted approximately $575,000 and kept the house I loved. Greg moved into a two-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. His lifestyle took the hit I'd predicted. No more expensive dinners, no more designer workout clothes. He was living on what remained of his income after child support and the settlement. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd tried to rekindle things with Tessa. She'd apparently met someone else, a personal trainer closer to her own age. Turns out when you're 24, dating a nearly divorced 40-year-old going through financial hardship isn't that appealing. Greg tried dating. I heard about that too. Women our age weren't interested once they learned the story. He'd left his wife of 20 years for someone younger, and word gets around. Younger women weren't interested either, not when he could barely afford to take them anywhere nice. Meanwhile, I flourished. My business hit $650,000 in revenue the first year post-divorce. I hired 2 more employees, expanded into new product lines. I redesigned the house entirely, making it mine in a way it had never been when Greg and I shared it. I took that trip to Paris I'd always wanted. Spent 2 weeks wandering museums, eating at sidewalk cafes, practicing my terrible French with patient locals. I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. I started a pottery class at the community center. Made friends with a group of women in their 30s and 40s, all of whom were thriving in their lives. We'd have wine nights where we'd laugh about the ridiculous things men said to us about the freedom of being established in ourselves. Lucas came home from college for Thanksgiving that first year. He'd been hurt by the divorce, initially angry at both of us for not working it out. But over time, especially as he learned more of what his father had said and done, his perspective shifted. "I'm proud of you, Mom," he said one evening as we were cleaning up after dinner, "for not settling, for knowing your worth." "Thank you, sweetheart. Dad called me last week. He wanted me to convince you to meet with him." "And what did you say?" "I told him that wasn't my place, that he'd made his choices, and now he had to live with them." I hugged my son, grateful he'd grown into such a thoughtful young man. Eventually, I started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just coffee dates and casual dinners. I wasn't in a hurry. But it was nice to be seen again, to have men appreciate me for who I was at 39, not wish I was someone younger. I met someone eventually. James, a doctor at the hospital. He was 45, divorced with grown kids of his own. We took things slow, both of us cautious after our previous marriages. But he made me laugh. He asked about my work and actually listened to the answers. He told me I was beautiful, and meant it not because I looked 24, but because he appreciated the woman I actually was. 1 year after my divorce was finalized, I sat in my garden on a Saturday morning, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. The roses I'd planted were blooming more beautifully than ever. I'd added new varieties this spring, colors I'd always loved, but Greg had disliked. My phone buzzed. A text from James, asking if I wanted to grab brunch. I smiled and replied, yes. Another text came through, this one from Rachel. A screenshot of Greg's Facebook post, apparently. It was a generic inspirational quote about second chances and learning from mistakes. The comments were sparse, mostly generic encouragement. I didn't respond to Rachel. I didn't need to see Greg's posts or know what he was up to. That part of my life was over. I thought about the past 2 years. The pain of discovery, the shock of his words, the anger at being treated as disposable. But also the strength I'd found, the independence I'd claimed, the life I'd built on my own terms. Greg had wanted someone young, someone in their prime. He'd looked at me and seen someone past her best years, worn down, no longer exciting. And in doing so, he'd revealed not a truth about me, but a limitation in himself. Because here's what he never understood. Age doesn't diminish value. Experience doesn't equal obsolescence. The lines on my face, the changes in my body, the weight of years, they didn't make me less. They made me more capable, more confident, more certain of who I was and what I deserved. At 39, I was earning more than I ever had. I was happier than I'd been in years. I was surrounded by people who valued me, who saw my worth, who didn't wish I was someone else. Greg thought he was trading up when he chose Tessa, but he'd actually traded away something irreplaceable. A partnership built over 2 decades. A woman who'd supported him through everything. A life of genuine substance for the illusion of recaptured youth. And when he finally realized what he'd lost, it was too late. I'd moved on. I'd built a new life. A better life. He'd tried to make me feel disposable. Instead, he'd set me free. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone underestimate you only for you to prove them spectacularly wrong? Drop your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you stood up for yourself when someone tried to make you feel less than you are. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that your value doesn't decrease just because someone fails to see it, please hit that like button. It helps others who need to hear this message find this video. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories about finding strength when life tests you, about standing up for yourself even when it's scary, about knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less. And please share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's being told they're past their prime, that they're not enough, that someone younger or different would be better. Share it with anyone who needs a reminder that aging isn't losing value. It's gaining it. Thank you for listening to my story, for spending this time with me, for caring enough to hear how this played out. Remember this. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's inability to see it. You are valuable. You are strong. You are enough exactly as you are. The person who tells you otherwise isn't revealing a truth about you. They're revealing a limitation in themselves. Take care of yourselves. Know your value. And never let anyone convince you that your best years are behind you. Because the truth is, the best years are always the ones where you know yourself, love yourself, and refuse to settle for anything less than you deserve. Those years, they might just be ahead of you, and they're worth fighting for.